The rule is, there's 8 sections here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Pick one record at random from each.
Okay.
Just pick it at random, yeah? Okay, that's 1. That's 2. 3. Okay. There's 2 there.
Oh, whoops.
I'll take that one here. I'll put it away. Is that where it went?
I have no idea.
You don't just put it in random. You know these are in alphabetical order.
No. What?
Listen, that's what obsessive record collectors do. Come on.
There's no way. I don't believe you.
Okay, 2 more. Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Welcome to the video. Here's another random selection from the record collection. So 8 albums, chosen not by me, but here they are, in no particular order. First one today is Squeeze, The Knowledge. Now this album, I think, was released in 2017. Now, I really like Squeeze. It's like pop music for grown-ups. They very famous, of course, for Cool for Cats and Up the Junction. I particularly love the album's East Side Story from 78, I think it was, and Some Fantastic Place, which came out in, I think, the mid-1990s. That was plugged at the time by DJ Danny Baker extensively. They put this out, as I say, in 2017, and you kind of got to wonder what makes bands who've been around for 40 years still want to make fresh music and to try and kind of repeat their success of the early years. And this has got a nice lavish package. It's 45 RPM on two discs. Nice cover, the whole thing. But it is totally lackluster. They were always renowned for lyrics of social concern. Up the Junction would be a really good one, a good example of that one. But here they talk about the National Health Service. They rail against the Tories' austerity policies of the 2010s. Nothing wrong with all of that, of course, but they've just lost it here in terms of melodies. So the lyrics are a little bit kind of predictable, but pretty good. They're trying to tell stories, but this particular album here is devoid of melody. And so I'd give this probably just a 4 out of 10. It's for completists only. So that's Squeeze. The second album chosen for me today was a band called Trapeze. First album, I think, called Trapeze. Now, what is this all about? Well, sometimes you enjoy your favourite bands, and you begin to understand about the bands the various members were in prior to joining a favoured band. And in this case, it was the bass player and sometime lead singer for Deep Purple, Glenn Hughes. And this was his first successful band called Trapeze. So this album came out, my goodness me, it's probably it's definitely early 70s. Maybe 1970 itself. Yes, it is 1970. And I like Glenn Hughes. I think he's a good singer, good bass player, great showman, no doubt about it, great guy. I've never listened to this album. It's just one of those albums that I picked up in a second-hand bin somewhere, and I thought, Trapeze, Glenn Hughes, must be good. Probably had it for about 15 years. Never listened to it. Hey-ho, can't say anything about it. Album number 3 today is the Strawbs, Hero and Heroine. This is a mid-1970s album, maybe 1974. Can't tell from the cover here. It doesn't really matter, but it's early mid-70s. Now, the Strawbs, if you don't know, were a kind of a folk rock group that came around in the late 60s, early 70s, led by Dave Cousins, the main songwriter and singer, and Dave Lambert on guitar, and some others, of course, Chaz Cronk, Rod Coombs, John Hawken on keyboards. But Rick Wakeman used to be with them in the early days, 69 to 71, I understand. And Rick Wakeman, of course, the famous keyboard player who joined Yes. And he was with them for a while, and I think he left the band. He played on Bowie's Hunky Dory, joined Yes, and I think the Strawbs probably thought, Yes are getting some success with this prog music. So what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of just relying on mainly Rick Wakeman's piano, in the early days, we're going to have a broader array of keyboards, and we're going to start using Mellotron and great big chords and all that sort of stuff. So this album is kind of a prog pop classic even. They remind me a little bit of Supertramp in that they managed to marry the progressive rock tendencies with pop music. So here you've got some kind of single material. You've got The Winter Long, Shine On Silver Song, which was indeed a single, Lay a Little Light on Me. So it starts with this epic suite called Autumn, and it's got the Heroine's theme, Deep Summers, Sleep, and then The Winter Long, and it's beautiful. I mean, great lyrics, great melodies, very varied instrumentation, and the title track itself, Hero and Heroine, has got, as I've kind of implied, those great big crashing keyboard chords, very, very dramatic. Yeah, good band. Probably their best album, arguably the best album. Some people might say the one after this is, or the one before, one after, is equally as good. Hey ho. Good album though. Album number 4 on this occasion is Van de Graaff Generator. The Least We Can Do Is Wave to Each Other. This is Van de Graaff's second album. Now, if you don't know Van de Graaff Generator, they were the more dissonant, no guitar, no electric guitar, kind of prog rock band from the Charisma label, same label as Genesis, of course, led by singer-songwriter Peter Hamill, and I've said much about Peter Hamill in the past. The guitar is, they've got keyboards, of course, Hugh Banton on keyboards, but the real difference between Van de Graaff and other bands of the genre was that the outside of the keyboards, the lead instrument was the saxophone by David Jackson. So there's no real guitar, but there's saxophone instead. But this is full of classic, this is a kind of classic Van de Graaff sound here. This is where it really came to the fore. You've got, I mean, they're all 6 tracks on the album. They're all absolutely epic for different reasons. Darkness, White Hammer, After the Flood, big, dark, dramatic, just fantastic tracks. But the highlight is Refugees, which is a really melodic, kind of almost like a ballad, which is obviously about the experience of refugees, I think coming from Eastern Europe in the 60s and 70s. So it would equally apply today for obvious reasons. But that's the second album by Van de Graaff Generator. I think I did a prog rock breakdown when I suggested that this is probably one of the first 2 albums anybody wishing to explore Van de Graaff Generator they should explore. It's because it's quite accessible, this one. Some of the others are a little bit more difficult, but they're an absolutely fantastic band with an absolutely brilliant singer-songwriter. Wonderful band. Next one is Robert Wyatt. This was a release that came around maybe 10 years ago, live from the Drury Lane Theatre in London. Guest stars Mike Oldfield on guitar, obviously, Fred Frith, Nick Mason, drummer from Floyd, Dave Stewart, famous keyboard player, Hugh Hopper, Ivor Cutler on there as well, and introduced at length by John Peel. Wyatt, bit of an acquired taste really, hard to take a full double album's worth, which is what this one is. This is way before he did a version of Elvis Costello's Shipbuilding, which is highly renowned for good reason. But here he's got the typical early Virgin Records experimental sound, so avant-garde, more jazz than rock really. So I've got a few of his albums, not a huge fan. I think I prefer the stuff he did in the 80s and 90s, where it's a little bit more explicitly jazz. But this one, it's a good memento of obviously a good night out for those who were in attendance. 3 more. Loudon Wainwright III, Attempted Mustache, 1973, I think. Loudon Wainwright, singer-songwriter, mainly guitar, a little bit of banjo on this. His instrumentation, his arrangements are really predictable. It's probably one of the reasons why he didn't really massively catch on, although Loudon Wainwright fans will say he certainly did catch on. But he was never really loved by the critics, partly because he was too clever by half. I mean, highly intelligent. His lyrics are brilliant. He writes about all sorts of, politics, relationships, parenthood. He's got a lot of humour and pathos in his music. So it's hard to nail him down as to what sort of artist he really is. Because he's got that humour, I think people didn't really take him seriously. As I say, I think this is early 1970s, 1973. I prefer his 80s material when he married all that cleverness and lyrical aplomb with more tenderness. Some of his stuff's quite moving as you get into the 80s and then the 90s. But yeah, an absolutely fantastic artist. Saw him one time. He used to be on television. He used to do comedy tracks on contemporary themes, newsworthy themes on UK television. I think on That's Life maybe was the programme. But then it just really cemented his reputation as someone who maybe wasn't to be taken too seriously. Good guy though. Good artist. Second last one today is Joe Walsh, The Smoker You Drink, The Player You Get. This is one of a couple of Joe Walsh albums I picked up when I joined a record club, and I was rapidly acquiring records and trying to build the collection. Joe, this is his solo years. He used to be in the James Gang, probably the founder of the James Gang, and of course after 2 or 3 or 4 albums, he joined the Eagles, and the rest is history. But this has a few classic tracks on it. Rocky Mountain Way, possibly his most famous track. Bookends is really nice. Meadows, Dreams is also great as well. So a little bit patchy, kind of not quite developed, not the finished article. Probably realised that his solo career was going to eventually run out of steam, and when the opportunity came to join the Eagles, he obviously jumped at it and has never looked back. Good stuff though. And finally today, Stevie Wonder, Inner Visions. What a legend, absolute legend. This is from his golden period in the early 1970s when he did Music of My Mind, Fulfilling This First Finale, Talking Book, and of course Inner Visions. This golden period was truly golden. There's no bad tracks, and he was kind of commercial, but in fact he was pushing the boundaries of what Motown had done up to that point. So he was a real innovator as well. But yeah, fantastic. This album, this is a sealed copy. It's my second copy. It was only £5, so who can resist a sealed copy for £5? But absolutely brilliant tracks on here. Too High opens the album. The epic Living for the City, about this young black guy who goes to New York City from out of town. Just absolutely superb. Higher Ground is a classic as well. Don't You Worry About a Thing, and it closes with He's Mr. Know-It-All. You cannot go wrong with early 70s Stevie Wonder, and definitely not as background music or music to drive to. Just careful listening really repays dividends here, because he's so clever and so good at what he did. So yeah, that's the last one today. Stevie Wonder, Inner Visions. So that's 8 more albums from the random collection. I hope that some of them you'll recognise. You might be inspired to pick them up again. One or two new ones. If anybody's interested in a particular artist and say, well, why don't you do a rundown of their albums? There's at least a couple of artists in here that I'm ready and willing to do that. I'd happily do that. So yeah, anyway, that's enough for today. And I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching, as usual. Cheers.